Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Lab Automation, Taking Lab Digitization to the Next Level with Live Q&A. This webinar is part of the 7th annual event in the Laboratory Automation Virtual Event Series. I am Morgan Sterling of Labroots, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Today's educational web seminar is presented by Labroots and sponsored by eLabNext. For more information about eLabNext, go to www.elabnext.com. Now let's get started. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this event is interactive. We do encourage you to first participate by communicating with other attendees using our live chat feature during the presentation. You can find the live chat located at the left of your screen. You can also participate by submitting as many questions as you would like during the presentation. To do so, simply type them into the Ask a Question box and click Submit. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. In addition to asking questions, we do encourage you to participate in 3 poll questions at the end of the speaker presentation. Click on your answer when the poll questions are displayed. If you are having trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, click on the Help Desk button located at the top of your screen within the navigation bar or from the lobby. Finally, as a reminder, this presentation is educational and offers free continuing education credits. Click on the Continuing Education Credits link located in the Abstract window below the presentation window and follow the process to obtain your credits. I now present today's speakers, James St. Pierre, the Key Account Manager at eLabNext, and Carl Mahan, also a Key Account Manager at the Lab Digitalization Specialist at eLabNext. For a complete biography on our speakers, please visit the Presenter tab from the menu at the top left of your screen. James and Carl, you may now begin your presentation.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Jim St. Pierre here today with Carl Mahan. We're both lab digitization specialists here at eLabNext. We're thrilled to be a part of this Labroots series, and today we'll be talking about lab automation in the context of digital lab platforms, or DLPs. Carl's going to get us started, so take it away, Carl.
Thanks, Jim. So your digital lab platform is like the smartphone for your lab. It is a lab operating system that controls all of the digital aspects of your research. We started with physical notebooks to track all of our information, and these are as old as science itself. From there, improvements in information processing led to the development of the first electronic lab notebooks in the 1990s. Around the same time, mobile phones started coming out. These early systems, while revolutionary, were all bespoke solutions created by large pharma companies that were unique to their processes. Today, these platforms are outdated and clunky since they are not adaptable to changing lab conditions. And this brings us to the late 2000s, where we saw the advent of the digital lab platform in truth. These are comprehensive solutions that encompass multiple different data systems, allowing different parts of the lab to digitally communicate with each other in a cohesive system. And that's where we really begin to automate our lab.
Now that we've reviewed how we got here, how do we continue to push our lab digitization forward through automation? First, it's important to understand that automation is a journey. No, not that journey. And not that journey either. There we go. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And excellence, of course, is the whole point of lab automation. It's not a one-time upgrade you make then forget about. And lab automation is a journey you take over time, perhaps without a defined final destination. It comes one step at a time, making progress as you go. Understanding this can actually be quite liberating, which brings me to the next slide. I'm sure many of you have heard the project management joke, how do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a time. In other words, don't try to do it all at once. Break the problem down into manageable pieces. Same thing with lab automation. Organizations should take the same approach. If you'll indulge me sticking with this analogy, maybe the previous slide should have been automation as a meal. Anyway, start by setting the table. Make sure everything is in place before even taking your first bite. Automating a bad system will just create mistakes faster. Garbage in, garbage out. You need to prepare for success, and that preparation is really the first step on the automation journey. Do not rush or skip this prep work. Some questions to ask yourself. What aspects of our workflow should be automated, and why? What's the ROI? Can our current digital system handle automation well? If not, you'll either hit a brick wall and need to switch platforms later, or you'll be throwing good money after bad to shoehorn in a solution where it really doesn't fit. Better to switch digital platforms now while the system is still relatively small and simple. Plan for growth, in other words. Next, tackle the low-hanging fruit. This is your appetizer. Make the small, easy improvements that will have an immediate impact. These also tend to be low-cost and low-risk changes. These small changes are easier for end users to accept and will prime them for changes to come, prime them for the larger changes to come. If you have team members who are resistant to change, easing them into automation gives them time to adjust and minimizes resistance. Now you're ready for mid-range automation improvements. Still not the main course, but it's all part of the meal. We'll call this the salad. These improvements are still relatively low cost, but might require more initial time and effort to implement. The ROI is still worth it. So this is really your sweat equity automation. It's work you can choose to tackle in-house or look for outside assistance. Finally, we're at the main course, what folks traditionally think of as automation with a capital A. These changes generally only make sense in highly structured environments with repetitive workflows, which is why you see them most often in manufacturing. They're more expensive and time-consuming to put in place, and except for the largest organizations who have the resources, this automation will require assistance from a third-party solutions provider. These advanced automations are also more difficult to modify down the road due to their complexity. Remember how I said not to rush on the planning stage? Yeah. Despite the caveats, these bigger automation steps can also yield the biggest long-term benefits. Throughout this process, you also want to take the time to evaluate the effect your changes are having and make any necessary course corrections before moving on. We'll think of this as the sorbet to cleanse the palate. Take a moment to digest recent changes and make sure you have an appetite for what's coming next. I want to stress at this point, as with any journey, you can choose to stop any point and say, this is far enough. Advanced, expensive automation may not be a good fit for everyone. Or maybe you're just hitting pause and saying, we're not ready for the next step yet. But we've put the pieces in place to be ready if and when the time comes.
Thanks for that, Jim. So from there, let's dive into this journey's foundation in a bit more detail. We'll start with digitization and actually bringing everything into your lab workspace. This is the absolute bedrock foundation of the process. Until you have something in a digital system, you can do nothing to automate it. After all, paper doesn't do anything on its own. You can digitize your information in any software platform, but ideally you want a program that allows communication and storing all of your information in one location. Like you can see here, this gives you a clear layout of all of your information in a nice, friendly digital format. And these same tools that allow you to digitize will also bring you the added benefit of standardizing your information so that it's repeatable and easy to access for any user across the platform. When automating your systems, the information needs to be in a consistent format across the system so that automated processes can easily add, update, and search through the records. To support this, you want a platform that allows for standardized data formats and validating the incoming data. And you can see here an example of software displaying the end result of this in a nice organized table. Another key pillar of this foundation is your adoption of the software. This is more on the user side of things, but if your scientists don't like this platform, they're not going to use it. And if no one uses the platform, it won't achieve anything. So you need an application with a clean, easy to understand user interface that allows everyone to communicate with minimal headache. The software also has to, support all of the work your team is doing with appropriate features. The exact requirements for this is obviously going to vary from one lab to another. And finally, you want to make sure that there's adequate support for the rollout and training for this new software. And congratulations, at this point you have completed the first step of your automation journey. Even this early step will bring a lot of efficiency into your lab. Once things are digital, they can be easily copied, searched, or moved around. sparing you from paper documents and constantly documenting handwritten notes. This allows your system to move at the speed of typing, at the speed of speech, or even at the speed of a computer if everything is automated correctly. You also don't have to worry about records being lost, and it's also much easier to find information when you need to put your hands on it. So now you're well prepared with the essential tools for basic automation. And once you have this foundation in place, you can continue your journey to more mid-level automation.
Absolutely. And with mid-level automation, we're going to start with data integration. There's a logical progression for this journey: digitize, integrate, automate. These steps can occur independently or at the same time. Integration is a natural extension of the standardization Carl just mentioned. The process of integrating disparate systems can itself yield a level of automation. It also prepares your lab for more sophisticated automation down the road. You want to avoid fragmentation or separate digital systems that don't communicate. This problem actually decreases efficiency in standardization. You end up introducing duplication of data entry into multiple systems, which takes time and is prone to human error. Or even worse, users stop using one or more of the tools because of the extra work involved, and they revert to old analog habits. Fragmented systems also can't easily be automated. You're going to hit a wall at some point where you simply can't make more improvements without a complete overhaul. Back to square one. With integration, you ensure that you're working on a digital lab platform that can act as a single source of truth for all of your data. All your researchers should be working on that same platform, one that maintains access across the specialized software tools each discipline needs. If you're struggling with fragmented data and applications that don't communicate with each other, there's some work to be done before moving on to the next step. And digital lab platforms exist today, such as eLabJournal, that provide a high level of integration out of the box without the need for expensive custom development projects. Next, we'll take a look at access at your fingertips. And really with this, cloud-based software allows you to access your data and your processes anywhere, anytime. This should include user-friendly mobile and access through phone and tablet companion apps, reactive web designs that work on any device or both. Make accessing your digital platform easy and convenient, and you'll maximize the adoption rate by your end users. How you interact with the system changes when you're away from your workstation. So the digital lab platform should adapt with the tools such as hands-free dictation and transcription, voice-activated assistants, and text-to-speech readers. Elemental Labs, for example, provides just such an app that integrates seamlessly with eLabJournal and other DLPs. Convenient access, of course, cannot come at the expense of data security. So look for solution providers that are ISO 27001 certified and offer enterprise features such as two-factor authentication or SSO integration, VPN tunneling, IP range restrictions, and the like. Depending on your IT department's data security vision, you may want a solution that actually allows self-hosting. In this scenario, the users still see the platform as being cloud-hosted, but the actual servers remain within your network and under your organization's complete control. And there is debate in the IT circles about whether cloud or on-site hosting is better, but I'm not going down that rabbit hole. The point is, this should be your choice to make. Don't settle for a vendor that can't offer you your preferred hosting. Next is automated processes. Use your DLP to take some of the work off your users' plates. For example, have your inventory system automatically track when reagents or consumables are running low, notify the appropriate person, and add those items to a shopping list for easy restocking. Take advantage of collaboration tools and assign tasks to automate project management within the platform. You may use other project management software, but having a button to create a task right in front of you in the moment is far more convenient than switching applications. It's therefore more likely to get used. This won't replace your project management software, which is for bigger picture items, but instead work alongside it to manage the smaller daily tasks. Here's another example of process automation. Configure your digital lab platform to automatically sync instrument output data files. So they're already in the system waiting for you when you need them. No separate importing or uploading steps are needed. And templates. Identify repetitive workflows, then create templates to automate those steps. This can include protocol documentation, experiment report creation, and even setting up entire study frameworks. Building in these day-to-day efficiencies is where you really start to get buy-in from end users. Your researchers can focus on the science and not spend half their day on documentation. You can see how automation through templates is a natural extension of the earlier topics, standardization and efficiency. Barcodes are a big one. Barcodes create a physical digital connection and shouldn't be overlooked as a step in the automation journey. We all know barcodes can be used to identify objects in the database. You can slap a barcoded label on samples, but you can also label your instruments, specific locations or compartments within storage units, etc. So what's the benefit? Interacting with your samples and equipment with barcodes is faster, more reliable than the alternatives, and less prone to human error. For instance, scan a sample's barcoded label, scan the barcoded label identifying the new box or maybe a rack in your ULT, and boom, you've moved a sample with your smartphone. The best case alternative is dragging your laptop around with you everywhere in the lab, which may not be ideal and perhaps not even possible. Or saying, you know what, I'll update those samples locations later when I'm back at my desk, and then just hoping you don't forget to actually do it. Another example of barcoding as automation is the ability to simply scan the samples sitting on the bench in front of you and having your digital lab platform automatically add them to your experiment. So they become part of the experiment's audit trail and are now cross-referenced and searchable from either the ELN or the inventory side of things. These are all elements of automation. You may have a person pulling the trigger on that handheld scanner device, but it's still automation. You can also take it to the next level with digital lab platforms that integrate plate and rack scanners. The ability to scan and manipulate 96 tubes simultaneously is a boon for biorepositories and other high sample throughput organizations. And that's off-the-shelf automation functionality available with the better digital lab platforms. We're not even talking about customizations yet.
Now we move into high-end automation. These are systems or processes that operate autonomously or near autonomously to quickly and rapidly manipulate the data within your system. The first of these is a physical or digital bridge. This covers any action you're taking physically that is automatically updated or replicated digitally so that your digital records are kept up to date with your physical actions. As an example, we can look at a barcode automation workflow. This started as a manual process where samples were received, scanned, inspected, logged, and updated before being finally physically stored in the freezer. By creating an automated barcode connection, the samples could be scanned, logged, and updated with a single button press, vastly expediting the throughput of the process. And this is the crux of all of these bridge-type automations. They take a common lab action that's currently 10 or more clicks and reduce it to a single button press. And just like that, you've increased speed and efficiency while also reducing human data entry errors. And these, all the goals of automation. The next step of this is software integrations. At these higher levels of automation, there is rarely a one-size-fits-all solution, so it is helpful if you can integrate third-party platforms through automated software connections. This lets you multiply the benefits from these different platforms without writing any custom computer code. This is an emerging aspect of automation as well, so this should be something that you pay close attention to as you're setting up on a different platform. As an extended sidebar, these types of integration can be established through a variety of different data formats. For example, HL7 or Health Language 7 is a healthcare messaging language that formats messages with predefined context, making them easier to interpret. So you want to make sure that all the software you're looking at is capable of sending and receiving in the data standard that you plan on using, whether that's JSON objects, HL7 messages, or some other encoded data format. Finally, we arrive at one of the peaks of automation, coding your own plugins and operations. This requires an application program interface or API, which allows the platform to send and receive data in a structured format. And the structure of this format is key since it preserves the rules of the software, which in turn maintains your audit trail and thus your compliance within the platform. It's also useful if you have access to a software development kit, an SDK, which allows for customer development within a software platform from changing a menu color to adding an entirely new function. This type of customization allows you to really fine-tune everything for your exact processes and connect with a wide range of devices such as automated liquid handlers or other robots. And the final step of automation is data processing. The analysis that we scientists do with the information in your system, these platforms are often powered by the AI systems that have been dominating the headlines of late. These novel programs use advanced machine learning to run complex data analysis. So once you have the information in a digital system, it can be sent to these platforms, the data will be processed, and the results sent back in a nice bundled format. So at this point, you turn around and see the journey you've made, how you started with your foundation, moved through mid-range, and then on to the high-end frontier of automation. As we've been saying, this is a journey, so it'll be a continual process to fine-tune and evolve your automation to adapt new and emerging technologies into this process. Whether this is through sprints or more dedicated marathon efforts, it's always something you should keep in the back of your mind as you grow and develop your company. At this point, we've talked a lot about these processes and how to put them in place. And now we'll show you some example workflows to highlight the different types of automation using eLab Journal. So why don't we change our screen over and we can go through that together. So here you can see a digital lab system tracking all the samples in our inventory. It's already set up with several different freezers organized by shelves and drawers with the individual boxes contained with each. And you can see all of the samples listed in this box. So say I've just received a new vial of patient serum. I can go ahead and create that right here in my inventory by selecting patient data and creating the sample. And this is sample 17540924. It's a 1.2 ml vial of material. It's from protocol NC999, from subject, and enter in the visit and the time point and all of this information. And all of these fields have been customized in the software to support this particular sample type. So you can very easily standardize the form and have everyone choosing from the same options. I haven't run the ILSEXer ADA for this yet, so I'm just going to put in the PK data that I have. And 6.78199. There we go. So now I have all my information typed in. I save and close. And I have a nice digital record of all this information listed here in the software. You can see it's also generated a unique identifier for this with its barcode. So now I can go ahead and print that out and stick it on a label. And anytime that barcode is scanned, it'll automatically open this data page. So I have that nice two-way connection between the physical sample and the digital records that Jim was talking about earlier. And if I need to look up any of this information, I can just go into our sample list over here. And this gives me the ability to browse through all of the inventory items in the database. And I can quickly filter through this. So say I'm looking for everything that was NC999. I can pull out all of those samples. And if I want to, I can then further customize the columns of information to see all of the relevant data here. So once you have all the information in the software, it's very easy to manipulate and search through it as needed. And this is, as we were talking about, kind of the foundation of digitization and automating your lab systems. From here, I'll hand it back over to Jim, who's going to talk a little bit about your lab notebook and using templates to help speed up that throughput.
Thanks, Carl. Let's take another look this time on the ELN side of things, and I'll sort of run through two quick examples, or relatively quick examples, hopefully. Let's actually go to the inventory experiment browser, and let's say we're in the cell culture group, and we need to go into this study and create a new experiment. Prior to templates and automation, this is going to be a manual process. So we'll give our experiment a name, we'll go ahead and create it, and then as a non-optimized process, we've got to go through and add all the different pieces of our experiment report one by one. So first, maybe there's a purpose, And I'll need to go in and add some text here. So we'll go ahead and edit. And here is some text. That's our purpose. Obviously, actually writing it out would take much longer. And then we go in and we might have a procedure that we follow with various outlined steps. And again, I may have to copy and paste this from another source, or I'm going to be writing out the steps as they come, also taking quite a bit of time. I'm speeding it up here for the sake of everyone's attention spans. And then so on and so forth, you go down through and you're going to have to add sections for your samples perhaps that you're pulling into inventory and running through your procedure. So we'll have to browse through the inventory to find the ones we're looking for one by one. And we have to actually know where they are, or perhaps we need to search for them. As Carl said, we have the 999 samples. Maybe this is one of the ones I need. And then we'll need to add a data section for results and calculations. Perhaps I have to go to my hard drive, search over my local hard drive, my laptop, but the shared network drive, find the template I'm looking for, hope it wasn't moved, deleted, or renamed without my knowledge, or start from scratch and build something and have to add all of the calculations, verify them, add the charts and graphs and whatnot. A lot of work. So this is obviously not ideal, especially if you're running the same experiment on new samples repeatedly. Those repetitive processes are where automation really comes into play. So let's do it again, but do it in a different way. Let's go back to this study. And instead, we're going to add an experiment from a template. And here I have a templated report ready to run. And as you see, when I add this, I have all my sections not only predefined, but also pre-populated with the information that I need. That's going to be the same from one run of the experiment to the next. I have, jump back to the top, I have my purpose. In this case, we can have formatting, we can have images and charts and links and whatnot. In this case, it's a Word Online document embedded within my experiment. I'll save that and minimize it. We have my procedure section. This is actually itself a separate template that was then added into the experiment template. And we can go in here, and if we restart it, we can see that not only is this pre-formatted with all the information, all the instructions I need to run this experiment, but I can also come in here and work with variables that have been predefined that also drive downstream calculations. I'm not, writing on the back of my glove with a Sharpie trying to do calculations in my head, perhaps making mistakes. It's all standardization, optimization, saving time, repeatability, all those cool buzzwords that we're looking for to get out of automation. And then down here we have our specimens materials, our sample section. Previously I had to browse through inventory to find these. Instead, what I can do here is actually just hit this button that says plus scanner, and now we have that barcode automation built in. I have, if you can visualize this, I'm at my lab bench. I have a rack of tubes in front of me, and rather than going through the software to hunt for those same tubes, I'm just going to scan their barcodes and quickly build a list of the relevant samples as they're sitting on the bench in front of me. I know they're the right samples. I've already pulled them from the freezer, and now with just a couple of clicks of the scanner button, I have that list of samples that are part of my experiment. I can do the same thing with output samples. Data, again, I've pre-uploaded to the template an Excel template. So I have my data entry format. I have any calculations already plugged in and waiting for me to just add in the actual output data. And then finally, things like associated files, whether these are machine configuration files, sequence DNA, these could be anything at all that you need to support the work you're doing that make sense to add to the template when it's going to be the same information from one run to the next. And if you compare these two side by side, creating an entire experiment report from scratch versus just filling in the necessary information on a template, you'll see that there's a significant time savings and also a significant reduction in the possibility for data entry errors. And that's just one example. At this point, I think we'll stop here and make sure we have some time for questions. I just want to summarize a little bit and remind folks that automation is itself a journey. Not every company, whether it's an academic lab or startup or what have you, needs to have a $500,000 LIMS system connected to liquid handling robots. That's great. It's a lot of fun to have toys. Not everybody needs to get to that point, or maybe not get to that point today. So think about automation as that journey where you're starting with the small things, the easy things, the things that will make your day-to-day life easier today and tomorrow. And then after that, just iterate, make it a recursive process. Look for the next thing you can automate, create templates, integrate your data so you're not importing and exporting to different platforms. It's all about taking the little steps that together add up to the big improvements that make your life easier, make your company more successful.
Alrighty, thank you so much for your presentation, James and Carl. Audience, we would appreciate your participation by answering a few polling questions. To record your answers, click on the option on the screen. So our first polling question is, which features of an ELN solution are most important to you and your team? Data organization, sample tracking, or security and compliance? I'll give you a few moments to select your answers. Great. Our next question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to consider implementing an electronic lab notebook solution in your lab? 1, no thanks. 5, this seems interesting. Or 10, sign me up. Again, I'll give you a few moments to select your answers. And our final question is, would you be interested in scheduling a personalized demo of our ELN solution to see how it could benefit your lab specifically? Yes, please, or I am all set. Alrighty, thank you so much for participating in those questions. Thank you again, James and Carl, for your informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you do have a question you'd like to ask, please do so now. Just click on the Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen. Now let's get started. Our first question is, can you share some specific examples of customers using digital tools and techniques to automate and improve the lab?
I think a prime one was a COVID testing lab. How about now? Okay. Perfect. Sorry about that, everyone. So we had a COVID testing facility using our software. They were collecting patient samples from maybe 14 different testing sites and bringing them all into one central location. And then needed to rapidly process all of these samples and send the information back. So they had technicians receiving these tubes using barcode automation to inspect the tubes, make sure that they weren't damaged in transit and that they actually had the correct information listed on them. They had automated data connections to facilitate the transit of the
original test order from the physician into our system, and then sending the results back out to the physician's software as well at the other side.
Great. Next question. Budgets are tight this year. How can we justify acquiring new software versus continuing to use the tools we already have?
Sorry, having a little audio issue still. So with software, something like this, where you're digitizing your labs and you're gaining efficiency, the efficiencies themselves offset the cost of the software. Platforms such as eLab Journal are not necessarily budget breakers. It's actually quite affordable. It's scalable. It can be rolled out only to the users and groups as needed. And in terms of saving time for the end users, letting them spend more time doing the actual research and work in the lab. And then on the back end, after the data has been collected, more efficiency in being able to use the data. You don't have a black hole where data is just going down a pit, never to be seen again. Data can be reused, data can be analyzed, aggregated, analyzed, etc. You're spending a lot of time creating the data and putting in the work, and the more use you get out of that data on the back end, the more value it has. So rather than thinking of an ELN or digital lab platform as a new cost, it should be thought of as a way to gain efficiency and save costs elsewhere in the organization.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Next question. Our IT has strict rules about new software and data security. How do you address those concerns?
Sure. So our platform is ISO 27001 certified, which is the gold standard for information security and data management. So that means we're audited by external third-party auditors who rigorously test all of our IT policies to make sure we're using best practice. And then if your IT team has any specific concerns or regulations unique to your organization, we also have a full IT security team headed by our CSO who are happy to work with you one-on-one to meet any of those requirements.
Awesome. And can digital lab platforms integrate with external software or hardware?
Yeah, at the point of adopting a platform that has that extensibility. What you want is a digital lab platform that's going to grow with you over time. Certainly, you need to address needs of today and integrations that are required for the work you're doing currently, but also even things you haven't thought of yet, perhaps new avenues of research from down the road, or things in the future. So with a platform that has an API and an SDK, and not just that has one, but has an API with a robust collection of endpoints and calls to be able to basically plug into and talk to the software for its various features, you have that ability to grow and to integrate, whether it's talking to instruments to send commands or receive output data, whether it's talking to other applications or databases. You need a platform that has the tools in place, and certainly those platforms exist today.
Great. And it looks like we have one final question. The eLab Journal appears to be browser-based, a feature it shares with other similar platforms. Can you briefly elaborate on the pros and cons of browser-based ELNs?
Sure, happy to dig into that. So first, confirming, yes, we are browser-based. So some of the pros of that is your information is stored securely in the cloud. We have multiple data centers that are physically isolated from each other that load balance in real time to guard against any data loss. So it would be almost impossible for you to lose any information from the platform. It also means it's accessible anywhere you have an internet connection. So whether you're traveling to a conference, working at a different site that day, or having to work from home for 2 years because of a pandemic, you always are able to access your data. Some of the cons of these cloud platforms are the reduced control your internal IT team has over the server, and the lack of customization options. We can mitigate that a little bit with dedicated installations where we can set up a dedicated server or even install the server to run locally on your own IT hardware.
Great. Thank you both. James and Carl, do you have any final comments for our audience?
I think it's just, sorry. I think the take home is certainly that automation doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to start as a big monumental project. These are things that can be addressed over time. When you're taking that first bite of the elephant, just keep in mind, take it in chunks, and stay within your resources, whether it's time or money or technical know-how, and then getting that solid foundation initially that can grow with you is really the key to success.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is even if you're not ready to start the journey of automation, it's never too early to start thinking about it. Just to keep it in the back of your mind as you lay out the structure and organization of your company and your lab work. Just thinking about how you'll digitize and automate things down the road so you're already starting to prepare and make your life easier ahead of time.
Awesome. Thank you again, James and Carl, for your time today and your important research. Before we go, I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today and for their interesting questions. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, eLab Next, for sponsoring today's webinar. Questions we did not have time for today and those submitted during the on-demand period will be addressed by the speaker via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. This webcast can be viewed on demand for 2 years until March 22nd of 2025. Labroots will alert you via email when it's available for replay. We do encourage you to share that email with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Until next time, goodbye.